morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a look at Tapu Koko VMAX. Yeah, that's right. Tapu Koko has been a bit of a favourite since Gen 7 came out. Obviously, we've already had Tapu Koko GX, we had the awesome Tapu Koko Prism Star, we had Tapu Koko V, not to mention that really good Tapu Koko that got printed like 20 different times, and incidentally, they're not the only Tapu Kokos we've had, they're just the most notable. So it was probably only a matter of time before we got ourselves a VMAX. What is interesting is we haven't just got ourselves a VMAX, we got ourselves a new V and a new VMAX. The question is, of course, is the new V any better? And is the VMAX needed? Bearing in mind Tapu Koko V has seen a bunch of play in Lightning decks. Well, our translations come from the lovely Antoine Boulet, who I'm assuming by now you probably guessed. And starting off, we got 210 HP, which is fine. It's alright. 10 more than the other one had. It's got a retreat cost of 1, which is actually really sad because the other one's got free retreat and we like free retreat. Weakness to fighting means that you're sharing a weakness with stuff like Pikachu and Zekrom, Eternatus, etc. And of course, all this single strike, rapid strike stuff is bringing in a lot of fighting type Pokemon on both sides. So it's probably not a good weakness to have right now. As for being a lightning Pokemon, well, you can accelerate energy using Tapu Koko Prism Star, which is kind of cool, and then it fits in nicely with decks like Pikachu and Zekrom, Boltund V, both of which incidentally will accelerate energy, so getting the energy probably isn't going to be an issue. But what does it do? Well, the first attack, 1 energy, 40 damage, meh. Because you see, what's this KOing? Like, I think the closest we're getting here is to something like a Snom, and Snom's got 50 HP, and a weakness to metal. I know it's water, but it's ice type in the game, so it comes through as water with a weakness to metal. So we don't even get a Snom. And yes, I know you could add something like a Vitality Band, but I do not expect to be having to add damage modification to get a KO on a Snom. In theory, if you can find a relevant water-weak Pokemon that evolves, you will probably be getting a KO here, and that's Sobble. You will get a one-hit KO on a Sobble. 70 HP, weakness to water. Cool. So if you really want to get rid of Sobble, if you're up against an Inteleon deck, this will be lovely, but that is about the best we can say here. You need to be essentially up against some kind of evolving water deck, like an Inteleon deck, or else it's just not going to work. And I think that kind of says everything you need it to say. I don't think this is going to work, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think this is a particularly good attack. But there is another attack as well. 2 lightning, 1 colorless energy, 20 damage, plus 40 more for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. Oh, yeah, that's a bit better. We like that a lot more. That's going to be a lot more useful. Of course, this should remind you of the anti-Boltund. Boltund, of course, does 10 damage plus 30 more for each of your energy, as long as it's lightning, but it will be. This does 20 damage plus 40 more for each of your opponents. So you do get that 10 more base and that 10 more for each energy. So there's a lot to like here. This is good. But I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, it's not in your control. Like, if I'm against an Eternatus deck, they are going to want to have probably 3 energy on the board. 2 on the Eternatus VMAX that's attacking, and 1 on the one that's incoming. Well, that means that I'm going to be hitting 40 times 3, which is 120. Add the 20 is 140. Like, that's not particularly impressive. Now, to be fair, you can make this better by playing Crushing Hammer, the theory being that if you're using Crushing Hammer, your opponent is going to be a bit more liberal with their attaching of energy, and that is going to give you extra damage. But there are some decks where this is going to work. So if we have a look at decks like Pikachu and Zekrom, for instance, those are decks that really try and spread energy around the field. Boltund's Electrify accelerates energy, and I've already told you Boltund's attack depends on as much energy as you can get. Pikachu and Zekrom's a free energy attacker, Raichu and Alolan Raichu is a free energy attacker, etc. So it's going to be much more difficult for a deck like that to drop the energy. Now, Pikachu and Zekrom having 240 HP, it's 6 energy. 6 energy will do 260, but 5 will only do 220, so it needs to be 6 energy. But Pikarom decks often want 6 energy on the field. 6 energy is I can attack with my Pikarom or my Raichu and Alolan Raichu, and that's a fun thing. Something like Center Scorch, who does an extra 40 damage for each energy attached to him, but you do an extra 40 damage for each energy attached to him. My point is, this is going to be a really good attack sometimes. Sometimes in some matchups against some decks, this is going to be pointless, it's not going to work. But there are some decks like Pikarom, like Center Scorch, that really do want to be attaching lots of energy, and if you don't attach loads of energy, your deck is going to be significantly weaker for it, and that means Tapu Koko can take advantage. If we put this side by side with the existing Tapu Koko, it's not such an easy decision. Now, the first attack, I feel good that the old Tapu Koko V is better. 20 damage is less than 40, but I'm drawing 2 cards, so yeah. I will drop that 20 damage in a heartbeat to get those 2 cards. I think the first attack is way better, and I'll also happily drop 10 HP to get free retreat. So the free retreat and the 20 damage draw 2 cards makes me want to play the old Tapu Koko. And similarly, free energy 200 damage is pretty good. That is a decent amount of damage for free energy. Your opponent, if they attach 4 energy, you're only doing 180 with a new Tapu Koko. You don't outpace the new Tapu Koko until your opponent attaches 5 energy, which you cannot rely on in every matchup. But the problem is, when they do attach that amount of energy, this new Tapu Koko becomes so good. So I suppose the conclusion is, I generally prefer the old Tapu Koko. But the fact is, there are going to be some matchups where your opponent really wants to attach energy, at which point I love this new Tapu Koko. But of course, I told you that there was a Tapu Koko VMAX, so we should probably have a look at the Tapu Koko VMAX as well. We got up to 320 HP, which is standard for a VMAX. We still keep our retreat cost of 1, or go up to a retreat cost of 1, depending on which one you've evolved from. U-turn board will give free retreat, but it's still sad. You've got that same weakness to fighting and the same lightning type, which means everything I said before totally still stands. But what you do is you gain a single attack. Free energy, 180 damage. Which sounds fairly uninspiring, given that the old Tapu Koko does free energy 200. But if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, the defending Pokemon is now paralyzed. Oh, that I like. That I like very much indeed. It's automatic paralysis, which is cool. But are we going to play it over Raichu and Alolan Raichu? Now, to be fair, once we hit August, September time, end of August, beginning of September, we are going to rotate, we're going to lose Raichu and Alolan Raichu, and it's going to become a moot point. But we haven't hit that yet. So it's not a moot point. And the fact of the matter is, for free energy, if Raichu and Alolan Raichu became active this turn, you do 160 plus paralysis. Now, don't get me wrong, 160 is less than 180, obviously. And you've got to get in and out the active every turn, which is not always possible. Although, to be fair, does happen. These decks that tend to play this deck can use it fairly reliably. But at least it's in your control. Because the thing is, you can't always rely on being behind on prizes. In some matchups, you need to get ahead on the prize race to stay ahead on the prize race and win. And if it's one of those games where you need to get ahead and stay ahead to win, then you're not going to be behind on prizes. And if you're not behind on prizes, you're never getting the paralysis. And if you're not getting the paralysis, this attack is literally worse than the existing Tapu Koko V. And that's a little bit of a problem. And this is what puts me off. Because there are going to be some games where you're kind of always down a prize, but then you bring it back at the end, where you basically get constant paralysis for the entire game, and it's gonna be awesome. But we've got Raichu and Alolan Raichu that's got a free energy paralysis attack, and it's a basic Pokemon, not an evolved Pokemon. Now, to be fair, you do lose the, 60 HP while giving up the same number of prizes, which is a bit sad, but I think most of the time I'd rather have Choo-Choo, plus it's much more fun to say. One thing to remember here, though, is that against something like a Galarian Obstagoon, at the moment, these Raichu and Alolan Raichu, Pikachu and Zekrom decks, etc., just don't have an answer, because they only play basic Pokemon. But a lot of these decks are playing Tapu Koko V as a one-off anyway, so this is literally a one-card deck that will just auto-destroy Galarian Zigzagoon. And given that Galarian Zigzagoon only does 90 damage, this will basically win you the matchup against Galarian Obstagoon. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on here. We got a Pokemon V, which is a lot of the time not as good as the other one, but it's got an attack that can really punish some decks. And a VMAX that gets lots of extra HP, but has an attack that a lot of the time is just going to be worse than what we've already got. But it gives you some good options you don't already have, which makes it extremely confusing to me. I'm going to give the pair of them, I seem to give this to everything in the last couple of days, but between 3 and 4 Wassies, we don't give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. The fact of the matter is, this second attack on Tapu Koko V is going to help in some matchups. The fact that the VMAX is an evolved Pokemon is going to help in some matchups. The Paralysis is going to help in some matchups. The problem is, I don't look at this as a VMAX, which is just going to start ruling the format. I look at it as, hey, in some lightning decks, this could be kind of useful, which isn't quite the same. But I'd like to know what you think, so let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.